Welcome back to Go For Side Effects. I'm your host, Kevin Simon, and today we got a special guest. His name is Mike from the Air Force that was in during Desert Shield, Desert Storm. Hey, Mike, this is Kevin with Go For Side Effects. How are you doing today?
Oh, pain. Pain today. Oh
You,
my God.
are you
Been
hurting?
raining. Yeah, I'm hurting. It's been raining, oh God, for a month in Florida, where I'm at right now, and it just it's killing me. There's been storms all around us.
Yeah,
So,
that's how it's been here in Texas.
has it really?
Yeah, it has been crazy here. It rains, then the sun comes out, then it rains and everything.
Yeah. Yeah, and it just friggin' after a while, man, it just takes my damn breath. It just um I guess my spine is screwed up
Yeah.
among other things. But
Well, why don't we go ahead and start with you telling everybody, what branch of the service you were in, the years you were in, and let's get into the conversation.
okay, sounds good. Um let's see. Well, I was in. I went in when I was 17 years old in 1980, and I stayed in close to 12 years, I guess. I got out at the end of 91, and I had a medical discharge. I think they gave me. They screwed me over. They gave me a 10%. They had held me over later than my time to get out because of medical reasons, because I had been in the hospital. I mean, like hospitalized on my back. And this went on for months. And in fact, I was in San Antonio and stayed in San Antonio for a while. Well, I guess I'll start out the story. I flew back from the Gulf War. I think it was in a 141. We flew back in web seats, and and I had problems then. I had a lot of pain problems, and so when I got back, I was actually, before we left, I had been running the hub for drug interdiction for the southeastern U.S., the satellite communications portion of it, and we were the radar and all that stuff. We were tied into it, and so when I got back, we had guard and reserve units were running it. When I got back, I became back in charge of it, and I did what I could, and I had the experience over everybody else, and so I knew what I was doing, but I just kept getting sick, and I just kept getting to the point where I couldn't function, and because of pain, and so they hospitalized me, and put me in Homestead Air Force Base hospital, and I guess I was there probably about a month, and they rolled me around on a gurney. I couldn't even sit in a wheelchair, and they did stuff. It felt like I'd been skinned alive. Actually, I guess my nerves were all turned up, but I was in so much pain. They were giving me Toradol, and they were giving injections, and they were giving me Dilaudid injections, and then they were giving me pain medicine by mouth along with Motrin, and then I just wasn't doing it, and all them drugs wasn't stopping the pain, and then they would do stuff like they had a tub in the hallway that they had, and they filled it full of ice, put me in it, and then because I was just desperate. I was desperate. And so they did that. And then they also had these big things that were like, I want to say they're like diaper material. You could wet them, and they had a plastic side to them. And then they got to where they would take those that were huge, and they would wet them a little bit and put them in the microwave oven, and they'd bring them in and they'd put them under me. They'd lie all down my side. And I was like, I would tell the nurse, I remember in the end, I told her, they're not hot. They're not very hot. She said, And she told me, she says, the plastic's melting in my fingers. So,
What?
yeah, well, they were so hot. She couldn't even handle them. The plastic was literally melting because of the heat, and I couldn't feel them. So, anyway, they ended up, after about a month, and I was on all those drugs. They flew me, air evac me on, I think it was the Florence Nightingale, whatever, aircraft, and flew me to Keesler. So when I got to Keesler, I had some hotshot doctor, major, who decided that I was on too many drugs, and he said, well, we're going to get him off them drugs and put him on a vigorous exercise program. After all that. So he took me off the drugs cold turkey. He just plain out stopped them. And when he did, I about lost my mind. I mean, I was plainly, after a month, I was extremely addicted to them. That was dangerous. He could have killed me.
Oh, of course.
But put me in a room with about 4 other guys, I think. It wasn't a private room. And they put me in this bed that they could pick up the sides on. And I felt like a baby crib, but I ended up about ripping the sides out of it because I was just losing my mind. Not only was I going through drug withdrawals, but I was in so much pain. And finally, I guess I kept them awake long enough, raised enough hell that the doctor sent orders in, and they said, well, give him a dose of this. I guess I made them mad at me, I guess. But I was told, because they were giving me a shot, that it was Phenergan and another drug that they mixed with it. And we know when they mix drugs, it makes it exponentially stronger.
Right.
But he gave me a drug cocktail mixed with Phenergan, and it wiped me out. And I remember laying in that bed once I got that drug in me, and I couldn't move. And I remember it was so strong. I remember thinking, I can't, excuse me 1 second. I can't move my arms and legs. If there was a fire, I couldn't get up and save myself because I'd freaking burn up in this room. I can't get up, can't walk, can't move. And of course, after a while, that's just fear you have when you're laying there and you can't do anything for yourself.
Right.
But after a while, I guess it eased up a bit. And I don't know if he gave me some other milder medication, and he was trying to push me into an exercise program, and it just wasn't working. And then I remember trying to get up and walk across the room, and I couldn't hardly do it. Well, then later on, they took x-rays, and they figured out, well, I had pneumonia while I was in the hospital there. They didn't even know it. So I guess because I had laid on my back for so long, that's what happens. All that stuff goes to your lungs, to the back of your lungs. So I guess I finally got through that, and I started giving myself little goals, and I would walk from the bed to the bathroom, from the bed to the bathroom. And finally I started where I could walk down the hall, and I slowly started to I was still in pain, but not as severe. And I slowly started to walk little short distances, and there were milestones because it wasn't easy for me to do that, And after being in such great condition, being in a tactical control squadron, we were mobile guys, and we exercised and ran, did calisthenics. We were in shape, and I couldn't hardly walk across the room. That wasn't a big deal. So then, after a while, they discharged me and sent me TDY to San Antonio to see the doctors and specialists there. So then they promptly put me in their program where they started injecting me in the spine with steroids. So they would bring me in, I don't know, like 2 or 3 days a week and lay me out on this table. And I guess between my vertebrae, and they were injecting steroids in my spine. So anyway, I, uh, I slowly waxed and waned. I went back and forth between having pain and then being okay. And, but I slowly started to come out of some of it. Uh, I figured out later that I would go up and I would go down.
Right.
And, that was just part of the illness that I had. And even as they describe it in the manual for the VA for Gulf War illness, they say that your symptoms wax and wane. In other words, sometimes they're worse, sometimes they're better. Sometimes they're really bad. So they're not always. Sometimes you're like, oh, I'm okay today. Of course, that don't usually last.
Right.
So anyway, and I used to feel bad when I had a good day. I'd be like, well, I'm okay today. Maybe I could do something. And then the next thing you know, I was down again, and I learned after a while, and I felt guilty sometimes. I just felt guilty because I wasn't working, because I had been used to earning my keep, always. And you can't work, you can't walk. And I remember dreaming, and I would dream that I was running. I mean, because I spent in between those times, I spent times in wheelchairs, and I couldn't hardly stand very well. I couldn't hardly walk. But anyway, I walked with a cane quite a bit, which I really hated. But anyway, after that, they sent me back to Homestead, and I was there, and they were still treating me there. And finally, I guess the board was putting a thing together to board me out, and I could have stuck around and fought for 30%. That's at least I would have had retirement from the Air Force. But me not being young and not knowing the real rules and what really went on, they knew. Of course they did. And they slapped 10% on me. They said, well, here, we're going to give you this, like, what, $30,000. We're going to give you this big amount of money, $30,000, which really, at the time, I was so sick of it. And I was so sick of being pushed around and poked and prodded and stuck and messed with and browbeat, and because the DOD and the people who knew that we had been in some bad places and knew that we had been given these shots that were bad for us and knew what we were exposed to were lying about it, and they were telling our commanders that we were faking it, that we were malingerers, we were lazy, and we were faking. And it was all in our head. There was nothing wrong with us.
Right. Now,
in the meantime, what's that? I'm sorry.
No, explain to every person out there that is listening to this podcast and that will listen to it later on. Where were you in Iraq? What areas and what all did you see? The burn pits and all that. The story that you were talking about. That.
I was in Dhahran. So our unit was 50 yards from the Patriot missile battery. So we got there in the beginning of, I guess it was around mid-August, I guess. I think he invaded, if I may be wrong, I want to say around the 7th or something like that, I want to say.
Correct.
But anyway, the week that he invaded, they called our unit in because we were training up. We were about to go to Colombia because we were doing the drug interdiction thing. So we had microwave and satellite and radar and all that stuff. We controlled aircraft like we were an airport or anything like that, air to air, air to ground. So we went to, we stopped in Riyadh first, and then we went to Dhahran. And when we got there, there was nothing there. There was 5 tanks. We had 5 tanks in the whole country, and they had, I don't know, several thousand, I heard. So there was nothing there. There was no tent cities. There was no Kobar towers.
Right.
There were nothing there. So the first place we stayed was like an old crappy schoolhouse. And then we were told that going to come try to find us. So we had 60s on the roof, and we all walked around with them 16s, and with grenade launchers and all kind of stuff, But the unit Control the Air War gave a sight picture to the Patriot missile battery that was there. They had their own phased array radars, but we had a much better, more advanced one. And we had a big thing. We blew it's like one of those bouncy rooms almost. I don't know if you've ever seen where they have the air traffic control things, but they blow them up like big, like one of the bouncy buildings, but they're huge. And of course, we had to fill sandbags, and oh my God, I filled so many sandbags that they had to operate on my wrist because I screwed my wrist up from filling sandbags, as did a bunch of us from digging because there was nothing there in place. So we did that, and then we had a forward unit that we put closer up to the front, and actually before the war started, they got buzzed. By the Iraqis, but anyway, my unit controlled the air war, the main one. And then when I got there, we set up the satellite communications network, and there was only a few of us on a piece of paper, and it looks like a hub spoke configuration kind of thing, like in a wagon wheel, except they keep they'll have the center will be the hub, and that's the main satellite system, and then the spokes are the they call them non-nodals. The center's the nodal; those are non-nodals, and they'll hook another nodal onto that, and then make another wheel, and so it just spreads the communications out throughout the whole theater. And anyway, we had I want to say some guys from Joint Chiefs of Staff security element there. I'm trying to think we had some other special guys there from various units, but we were a unit in the Air Force that we wore BDUs and carried weapons and trained, and they didn't have a lot of those units in the Air Force then.
Right.
But anyway, we set up our own defense perimeters and our own field phones, and set up our own M60 machine gun defenses and all that stuff. But I think they even pushed up some berms and stuff around us. But we had a big old bladder in the middle of our camp. Dead in the middle of the camp was a big old fuel bladder. I remember it filled with JTF5 or whatever, jet fuel.
Yeah, JP5 jet fuel.
Yeah, and so I just remember thinking, man, if something hits that thing, we're done. We're toast. So, and I remember we set up the perimeters and stuff, and we had passwords and stuff, and they're like, if you get that wrong, we're going to light the damn truck up. So you just didn't know. You didn't know who was who. Because everybody you saw, they were all wearing cheats, and you didn't know who your enemy was and who your friend was. You didn't know.
And to me, that's the biggest thing, too. When we were over there, I remember when we were loading cargo, and I remember our commanding officer saying, you don't know if these are friendly or not. Get the cargo on. Let's get back out of here.
You don't know. That's right. And how would you know?
And now, were you around the burn pits?
I was not. I got out before the stuff hit the fan with that. They actually got me out of there for medical reasons because I was having so damn many issues, and I'm sure all that precipitated from, I'm pretty sure, from the anthrax shots. I think is what started that, but also we had those pills. What do they call them? PB or
the brown ones,
whatever,
and the white ones,
and the blister packs.
Now you need to explain to everyone about how they did anthrax on you. This was an interesting story.
Yeah, well, the way they did it, because anthrax was a six shot series over 18 months. And of course, anthrax is a bovine disease, hoofed horn disease, which we changed, kind of like COVID. We changed it. We changed the cell structure or whatever it was to make it where humans could get it, where they could use it as a biological weapon. And Iraq had it. And how did we know they had it? Well, we knew they had it because we sold it to them or gave it to them.
Yeah.
So we knew they had it. And did they have the amount they were supposed to? No. They had way more. And they actually tied that to some of the bushes. They did. They had, I forget the company that it was, but they were tied into that. Of course, that was hush-hushed. But that was the truth, that as far as what I read, because there were some attorneys that had started a lawsuit to sue them, and they had all that information on it. Of course, the lawsuit didn't go anywhere because it's hard to sue the government.
Right, exactly.
But, and not only that, the government wasn't admitting what was going on. Now, later on, they admitted it. And they said they knew that they changed the adjuvant of the shot. Now, when we got our shot, like I said, it was a six series, I believe, shot series over 18 months normally. In other words, it was stretched out, and I think they made it shorter later on. But what we got was one big fat shot. We got it where it was just all in one.
That's crazy.
And we all lined up. Went to the orderly room, and one by one went in and bent over the desk of the first sergeant or whoever and got shot in the butt by the medic. We had our own medic. So the medics dispensed all those shots to everybody that was deploying on a weekend. It was like a Sunday or something when we came in. And then later on, they admitted that they changed the adjuvant of the shot from, I want to say, an alum-based, natural-based adjuvant to a polymer. Now, how did they figure that out? They figured that out because there was a lady who did research or works with women with breast implants. And someone she was family with, I believe, was in the Gulf War. And the person had all the same symptoms of the women that had gotten the breast implants when the breast implants had gotten into their bloodstream by one way or another, and it really wreaked havoc on their immune system. So their immune systems just went haywire because of it. And all the same symptoms, she saw that, and she said, oh, that looks very similar. Well, so she started digging, and somehow they got a hold of, I don't know if they got a hold of a batch or one of the shots or whatever they did, but she tested it, and they found something they called squalene in it. And I want to say that's the polymer, that's the adjuvant. And that was like a smoking gun to her. And she says, oh, she put two and two together. She was a scientist. She said, this is the same thing as the women with the breast implants. Then she figured out, well, the reason why is because it's the same thing in the shot that the women were getting in their bodies. Of course, women elected to do that, and we didn't. We had no clue.
Right.
So,
I also remember,
anyway,
I think one of the biggest things I remember being out there is it seemed like once a week we were getting a shot or taking a pill. And then when we're sitting out there, from what we ended up finding out later was that we really only had 40,000 shots of anthrax. And the ones who were up into the field on the land got them 40,000, and we got something else. And I'm just like, well, what the heck was something else?
What was that? Yeah.
I think that's one of the reasons why I started this. I mean, we know the nerve agent pills that they gave every single one of us out there. Right. I think that's another thing that's caused my problems, along with the sarin gas and everything else.
Yeah. I agree.
So how's the VA treating you now?
Well,
you know, where I go to the VA here, I got no complaints. In fact, 90% of the time, 98% of the time here, they are fantastic. I mean, professional people, very, very courteous. Every once in a while, you get somebody that's not so cool, but usually with the bigger VAs. Now, we have a clinic. It's a pretty big clinic, but, you know, everybody there is pretty awesome, I think, usually. Gainesville was pretty good. I'm in Tallahassee, Florida.
Right.
Gainesville, Florida was also pretty good, but there were some pockets of people there that weren't so good, and Lake City was mediocre. Miami was horrible. It was horrible, the Miami VA. And then I'm on more than one blog where I read horror stories about VAs.
Right.
And
right.
then I see people like me who come out and say, oh, man, no, the VA's fantastic where I'm at. So I know from experience of going to different ones that they're not all created equally.
Right.
So,
right.
And especially in different states, I see people who are banging their head against that same wall that I went through, and maybe you too, and you're still going through, where they do them the runaround. They get their appointment to get a examination for compensation. Usually you have to wait about 6 months. That's been my experience, 6 months.
Mine too.
Okay, so then you go there, you go to the exam, and it's usually 6 months later before you see your answer.
Right.
Has that been your experience?
That's been exactly my experience. And my other experience, too, is what most veterans don't know. And I hope if they're listening to this podcast, hear my words on this. You have to do your homework, and you have to give it to them. But if you go to the VA, you got to make sure that it's in your progress notes and your problems list. If it's not in your problems list, then they don't count that you have it.
No. And let me tell this little trick, and this may help some people if they're willing to do this. It's something that worked very well for me because I went through the... Hello?
Okay, I lost you, but we're back.
Yeah, okay. So I don't know where...
Tell us the little trick.
Okay, so the thing is where they do the 6 months and the 6 months, and it takes a year. And they kept doing that to me. They did it to me multiple times, and I was going on a regular basis being treated for different issues. And the same issues that I was being treated for, they were saying I didn't really have any problems with, and that the issues weren't service connected, or they were transient and didn't, held no weight, basically. That, there was no evidence to prove that I had those issues. Now, I knew better, and I had been being treated, and I had a sack full of drugs they gave me to be treated. And so I knew I was being treated for it, but they would every single time deny me. So what I did, I was desperate, and I remember because I wasn't walking, I had to quit work. I lost my career. So as an engineer, and so I would just sit and think about this all the time and be in pain all the time. And I thought I would get so angry when I would get those things back. And I would do everything I could to make sure that I went to my appointments and did everything right. Well, it didn't matter what I did right. They didn't really care. All they were doing was what they could get away with. So what I did, I said, you know what? You want to pretend like those things don't exist. So I got whichever, I forget, it was 8 or 10 ailments that I had on a regular basis. So I got that many copies of my medical records. And then what I did was I went through and I started pulling the copies. I said, well, what I'm going to do is for each issue that I have, I'm going to go through my medical records and I'm going to pull every single time I saw the doctor, every single time they gave me medicine, and every doctor's name, every date, everything for each issue. So I wrote the issues down, made a cover sheet, and I went through my records, and every time I had an issue and I found the page that pertained to that, I'd peel it out, put it in that stack, until pretty soon, with all the issues, I had separated all my records, and I had a stack for each one. Then I went through on the next sheet, and I took and made another cover sheet, and I wrote down every date that I saw the doctor for that issue.
Good idea.
Number one. Then I went back and I wrote every medication and every date they had given it to me, and for how long they had been giving it to me for that same issue. Then I went through and wrote all the doctors' names and all the people that were connected and all the things that they said. I put all that together, and I made like 8 or 10 separate packets. And in other words, and then made the cover sheets with all the information in it, so there was no escaping it.
Right.
So when I sent the packets in, and you couldn't sit there because it was a big, thick stack of records, and I know they didn't want to go through it. They didn't want to pay it. But when I did that, it put their feet to the fire, because there were dates and names and times, and if they didn't look at that, they weren't looking. And it ended up that I turned all that in, and I made some headway with that. But then they were still denying me. And so I had a VA rep who was a retired, she had been a nurse in Vietnam. And she was a fantastic woman. She helped me. I know that some of those people really had empathy for me and what I was going through. And she gave me a packet. She says, this is for Gulf War veterans. This is their new packet they put out. And these are the things they're looking for. And they were looking for specifics for just like what I had done, how I had separated it. Right. They were looking for specifics. And in other words, they wanted their hand held through it. They were looking for specifics. Then they wanted things like statements from your neighbors, maybe your pastor, people who knew you, things from your family that said they saw you and they knew you were ill, and all those things. There were several other things in the packet. And what I did was I had the packet. Well, I tailor-made a claim packet to send into the VA, and I made it exactly like they asked for. I sent it to the VA and waited my 6 months again. And then 6 months later, they sent me a letter and they said, oh, we appreciate you sending it in, whatever. Thank you for your service, blah, blah, blah. But there's information we need that is missing. And here's what it is. And they sent me the very same paper packet of information that I had used to build that packet. In other words, everything they were saying, that everything I didn't have, I had already sent them 6 months earlier. In other words, they didn't even bother to look at it. That's what it told me. It told me that packet sat on a stack somewhere, and they didn't even know that the information that they were saying they wanted had already been put there and was ready to be dealt with. So when I saw that, I blew up. I said, yeah, that's what I thought you guys were doing. You're ignoring it when veterans send in claims, you ignore it. And that, was that the government doing that? Was it lazy individuals doing that? I don't know who's doing that. But I could bet that even if it is lazy individuals, that the management wasn't watching them to make sure they did things right. So even if it wasn't the management's fault, but I think it went higher up, as we know, or we wouldn't have the issues we still have to this day. So anyway, after I got that notification back, I was fit to be tied. I was livid. And I picked up the telephone. I said, I'm going to get somebody's attention. And I had a friend who was a newspaper reporter, and he had written articles on me before, and he told me if I could ever help you in any way, let me know. He said, I have a straight connection to, I think, to API or UPI. He says, I can take a story and give it to them, and we can make it national. I said, really? He said, yes. Okay. I never thought I would use that. But after I got that back, and they denied me, and I knew they hadn't seen that package or even looked at it. I picked up the phone and I called the secretary of the VA's office. Of course, I got an answering machine. I left a message that said, basically explained to them what I had done and the fact that they had waited that long and sent me that packet back and never even looked at my stuff and then denied me anyway. And that I was angry, and I said, my next call is going to be to the president's office, which I couldn't do that, but I did call the vice president's office. I meant what I was saying. I told them that's going to be my next phone call, and if you guys don't get this straightened out, like immediately, there's also going to be a national newspaper article on it. I'm going to put everything together, and we're going to publish it nationally, what you're doing. And so I did that, and then I called the vice president's office, and he actually has an answering machine too. I left a message on there. Now, I'm not sure who got what or what was said, but I know that on a Saturday afternoon, that the VA called me. A representative from the Tampa VA, where they make the decisions, called me, which blew my mind because the VA just don't call you, not for that purpose.
Especially on a Saturday.
On a Saturday, yes. And so I was like, wow. Well, what I had done was I shook them. I think I shook them. And they didn't want that out. So the guy calls me and tells me, well, basically we can, we can figure this out. We can pick up bring up your rate enough. Maybe if we can bring it up to like say 80%, then we can give you unemployability, and you'll get disability at 100%. You'll be 80%, but you'll get 100% paid. And at that point, I had kids I was raising. I was a single dad. And I was desperate, and so anyway, I was going to accept that. Well, now in the meantime, I had spoken with, after I guess Monday, I spoke with the VA rep that had helped me, and I told her what was going on, and she said, "Listen, I'm going to tell you this. He's probably going to offer you an appointment in a year. And if he offers you that appointment, don't take it, because what they're going to do is they're going to give you money for a year, and then they're going to bring you in the next year, and they're going to take the percent that they gave you and they're going to drop it, and you're not going to get that. It's like a trick." And I thought to myself, that just sounds kind of out there. That's kind of crazy sounded. But I accepted it for what it was worth for face value. So the guy had called me back. We had been in touch. He called me back during the week trying to arrange all this. And in the end, he says, "Okay, we're going to go ahead and do this, and, and happy to help you." And we're all courteous to each other. And he says, "But now," he says, I'm going to go ahead and give you an appointment for next year to come in for another exam." And I thought, wow, that's exactly what I was told they were going to do. And I said, "No, sir." He said, "What?" I said, "No, sir, I will not come in for an exam next year. I know what's going on." And he got mad. He got really mad. Now, I don't know why, like it was a personal affront to him. And he told me, "You know what? I'm supposed to be on vacation with my family. Don't you have a heart? I work hard. I want to be on, and I stayed here just to fix your case, you know. And I just thought to myself, I don't really care. That's your job, buddy, you know. And he says, you know, as far as I'm concerned, you just lose my number. You don't know me. I thought, wow, I don't really care. Give me what I want. I can care less who you are. But and you can't make this stuff up.
Right.
I just think that it's, you know, you might think that if you don't have the experience that we have, a lot of Gulf War veterans, but once that happens to you and you know what the government's capable of, well, that kind of changes your mind.
Right.
And you look at it different. And you can't convince other people that have never had that experience. A lot of them, they're like, no, the government wouldn't do that. No, you're wrong.
Well, you know, that's what I tell most people. I mean, nobody really knows much about the Gulf War because they don't teach it. They don't know about every oil rig out there on fire or any of that stuff. And that's why I'm doing this podcast. We're going to start educating them. I'm going to have them hear everybody's stories, what went on out there. And I'm going to keep this going as long as God willing that they'll allow me to do this and keep going with it.
Yeah. God bless you for doing it.
Oh.
I've done some stuff for other veterans. I've tried to help as many as I could. Some you can help. Some won't help themselves.
Right.
Some are just so ill, they just can't. They mentally can't wrap their mind around it, or they haven't been able to. And because of that, and because they don't fight, they lose automatically. And, you know, I have a couple of friends. I have a really good friend who really got the brunt of it. And he was one of the forward units, you know, and he's got PTSD horribly bad. He's not even rated at 0%. And the VA's been treating him for mental health for years now. So every time he goes to claim PTSD, they throw something in there and deny him, and he can take it to appeal, but he just can't make himself mentally do it.
Right.
So there's a blockage there for him, you know, and he's not the only one I've seen that way. But now, being on the blog that I'm on, or the blogs that I'm on, I read stories every day of Gulf War veterans and their experiences, you know, and they're all very similar. They do the 6 months in thing that you know we're talking about, where it takes 6 months for the appointment. You go to the appointment, and it takes 6 months for their answer. That eats a year up of your life.
Oh, of course.
So for a year, you're still stuck in purgatory, trying to get your life together and suffering. And not only that, it's not just that you suffer, your family suffers.
Right.
Because you can't earn a living for them like you did. You're not even the same human being either.
See, I would love for like a caregiver or family to come on here and talk about their situation. And that would literally help other veterans' families understand what is going on, you know, in their household. And that's what we need. We need more voices. We need more people
yes, we do.
to come out and get angry over this. This is a sad situation I think all of us are in.
Yes,
but
I agree. One of the things I wanted to just plug in there was there are Gulf War support groups.
Thank you.
That everybody can, if you're a Gulf War veteran, can be a part of. But not only that, there's a support group for families, because a lot of the children and spouses got sick too. Now, I'm not talking about the children that were born after. They had massive birth defects. But I'm talking about the kids who were born before that. And for people who say, no way, that a shot, you can't take a shot and then pass it to somebody, you're incorrect, because they're already talking about the COVID vaccine, and they're talking about that people who get the vaccine can actually make other people ill who don't have the vaccine. So if you can't pass it, why would they be talking about that now with the COVID vaccine?
Right.
It's just not. That's just not so. And not only that, but a lot of the men who came home and they would have relations with their wife, the wives started having problems, urinary tract infections, real bad UTIs, and burning with sex, burning and problems themselves. So all my children have issues, and you can't put your finger on it to blame it on the Gulf War, but they got things like fibromyalgia, which is, and TMJ, and that's all part of it.
Yeah, I heard kids having POTS, EDS.
Yes, that's right. So all those things are issues. Now, the other thing I wanted to plug is the Don't Punish Pain site, because right now the CDC is engaging in the activity of trying to make laws for the U.S., and we didn't elect them. They're writing laws, and the DEA is doing the same thing. They're writing things for opioids for people. Now, I understand there's an opioid crisis, and you can say, well, a lot of people died from that. Yes, they did. But when they took the statistics and they mixed them up, though, they took the people who died from it, who OD'd from street drugs, and they mixed that with the people who died from doctor-given drugs. So if you mix those together, the ones that were on street drugs, now that's gone haywire from the fentanyl thing. But the ones where the doctors were giving them, that number actually dropped. But they mixed those statistics together and are hollering uncle for everybody to say, oh, you can't, Johnny's dying of an OD. Well, if Johnny was in the street trying to get high, he might.
Right.
But if somebody else needed the medication because they got pins in their back, or they're busted up, or they have, pain that just will not go away, they need opioids. They just do. And their quality of life suffers. They lay in bed and can't move now that they don't have pain medication. So which is worse, ODing on it or not having the choice and just suffering? And a lot of people have committed suicide from it.
Right.
So because they're in so much pain. So Don't Punish Pain is a website. We're trying to bring people's attention to that. We're fighting. We're contacting congressmen and senators, and we're trying to fight for that. There's also another bill that's in Congress for Gulf War veterans. So people need to pay attention to what politics are doing.
Right. Yeah, I know. It's the discussion on whether they're kind of like the 9/11 to keep funding research for it. And we need people to call their congressmen and senators and get this thing passed.
Yes. So I hope your podcast can bring attention to some of those things. If you are a Gulf War veteran or you're a family member of a Gulf War veteran, please Google Gulf War veteran, websites or Gulf War veteran blogs or groups, and join one and put your voice in there. Also, Don't Punish Pain.
And even if
join that group,
and even if you're from another country, it just isn't the United States. We need other countries. People from Europe, the UAE, all of them, anybody who was over at that time, they need to get in these blogs. They need to get on any of these websites.
Some of their troops suffered as bad or worse than our guys.
Of course.
And reason why I'd say worse is because when they got home, their government also denied their illness.
Of course. And I mean, I give the VA a lot of credit. The only thing I don't give it is that they're not doing enough research. That's the only thing I give it. I mean, They need to go back
Well,
and research us, research our families, our kids. I mean, because I can tell you, I mean, my daughter, she has POTS. She has stuff that I can't even explain that it's not inherited. So how did she catch it? And then you go on to these websites like the Go for Illnesses or any of that stuff, and you start seeing how other kids have the same thing, and none of us know why.
Yes.
But we're gonna start getting some answers, and we all just need to work together as a team.
We need to push it through because it's been 30 years. It's time.
Right. It is time.
Past time.
Right. We don't need to end up like the Vietnam veteran guys where most of them were too late when they started admitting, hey, we did wrong.
Of course. Yeah, they wouldn't do that. But I mean, like the brown water guys versus the blue water guys
Right.
in the Navy.
Right.
Did the same kind of thing to them. But the thing is this. Congress passed laws that said that certain illnesses for the Gulf War were presumed illnesses if you claimed them. If you were there and you claimed them, they are presumed that they give you the benefit of the doubt that you're telling the truth, and you get at least a 0% service connection to it.
And
well, guess what? That's not happening.
No, it's not.
So it's the VA itself being treated. Once you're in the system, if you're at a good facility, you're going to get treated good. But it's, to me, the part that's wrong are where the claims come in. To me, that's where they are sucking it through a straw.
Right. VES.
Fire hose through a straw. And they know exactly what they're doing. They know what they're doing.
They do.
So
but
that's the worst part.
I love the point that where you came back earlier and said, because this is the one thing I want to touch on for every vet. In your hometowns and even in the States, they have a lot of support group for veterans, hunting, fishing, water sports. I mean, all kinds of things that veterans can get involved in. Lowe's, Home Depot, all of them give discounts to veterans. Use them.
Yeah.
Especially if you got PTSD. Right. I mean, the support groups out there that they have for you, get a hold of them. They're local. We're going to try to put them up on our website as time goes. We're building on the Facebook website. I'm going to get some local ones in Texas, and I'll try to get it around the States. But please, don't hesitate to reach out to another veteran.
Yes. Yeah, that's right. I try to help as many as I can, as many as will listen, and I can talk to. I will give whatever amount of time I need to give to them to help them or assist them.
I will too. Well, Mike, I need to wrap it up, but I want to thank you for being on the Gulf War Side Effects, and I am going to bring you back on. I'm going to bring you back on to the show. I really enjoyed talking with you. Thank you very much for everything you've done.
Thank you, Kevin, for doing this, because somebody needs to put the word out there.
Yes, sir. And it's going to be all of us vets.
Yeah, that's fantastic, man. Anything I can do to help you or anybody else, please let me know.
Yes, sir.
Be glad to.
And you keep in touch with me.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, and you take care.
All right. You too. Thank you.
Okay.
Bye. I'd like to thank everybody for listening to this podcast. If you would like to be on the show, or you would like to send an email and send me information on Gulf War illnesses, I would really love to hear it. You can email me at kevinsimon@gulf